In an act of wonderfully skewed priorities, President Obama will appear in a reality TV show in which he gets survival tips from Bear Grylls in Alaska. Funny how far that is from the streets of Chicago, outposts in need of real survival training, much like the streets of Baltimore, Milwaukee, New York, New Orleans, where citizens are ventilated daily. As Obama grins in insulated comfort, somewhere another bystander bites the dust. So as Putin slices apart the Arctic, our guy renames a mountain from McKinley to Denali. Who knew Obama was a fan of trucks used to drop pop stars off at rehab? This is all window dressing for his bigger shtick, his apocalyptic climate change kabuki featuring a nightmarish endgame of road warrior ruin, unless, of course, you heed his warning.
Those who want to ignore the science, they are increasingly alone. They're on their own shrinking island. If we do nothing to keep glaciers from melting faster and oceans from rising faster and forests from burning faster and storms from growing stronger, we will condemn our children to a planet beyond their capacity to repair. Submerged countries, abandoned cities, fields no longer growing, indigenous peoples who can't carry out traditions that stretch back millennia.
Well, that doesn't sound so bad. It's the same strategy used with Iran. Agree with the Great One, or you will cause nuclear war. Denali sounds like denial, as Obama turns his back on big city murder rates. Remember, he was going to stop the rising tides. But what of this ocean of red? Milwaukee's murder rate jumps 76%. That's 45 extra bodies. St. Louis murder rate jumps 60%. That's 41 extra bodies. Baltimore jumps 56%, 77 bodies. D.C., 40% leap, that's 32 extra bodies. Chicago, a 20% jump, 50 bodies. And New York, a 9% increase, gives you 18 extra bodies. So in 8 months, that's hundreds of extra bodies, many of them black. It's quite a mountain, Mr. President. What shall we name it? Kimberly, rising murder rates, cops killed, but let's do a reality show.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to me, it's just such a glaring example of priorities askew. I fail still at this point to understand where he's coming from, because I don't speak the language he speaks. I don't understand his ideology and the emphasis that he puts on. He thinks that the biggest threat to national security is climate change. Whoa. Like, where do you even go from there? That's the problem. And so when you hear him talk about these things, I get that this is what he believes in and what he's very active in terms of putting forward his own thoughts, his own, agenda, whatever are his priorities. But I just don't feel that it's actually best serving the rest of the country, his vision. But
it's interesting, Juan, because you've talked about this more than anybody about what's happening in these cities and the murder rates. And it seems that to President Obama, his community is more like an academic, climate change obsessed community and not about these communities. Why do you think it's getting worse now? Do you think there's a Ferguson effect where the policing is backing off? Why are there more shootings and homicides?
I don't know the answer. And in fact, the people who are on the ground, the experts, the police, the public officials say they're not clear either. They say a lot of these are taking place among people who know each other inside homes.
That's New Orleans, right?
Yeah. And they say even like in Washington, D.C., where I live, the mayor the other day said, we have a high percentage of people who've been released, and about 10% of the murders related maybe to people who've been recently released. And of course, I thought when you were asking the president to come back, Gregory, I thought you were going to say, come back and fight for gun control. But I know you didn't mean that.
Of course not.
I don't mean that.
But you just brought up an interesting point about the recently released. That kind of speaks against prison reform.
Well, it does. I mean, you got to wonder, right? So the question is, I don't know if it speaks against prison reform, but you have to deal with people who've been recently released. If they don't have jobs, if they don't have a future, then what are we doing?
Well, then they start shooting people.
I have another one, another reason maybe to come back and deal with something else. It's in the news just a couple of minutes ago. This is the 8th cop that's been killed in the last 11 days. Maybe, where's the alarm there? I mean, I heard a lot of alarm for rising tides and fields that weren't going to grow. And floods that were going to happen and ice that was going to melt. There was huge amount of alarm there.
You should work with the Weather Channel.
We have a law enforcement being killed crisis going on right now. And where's the president on that? Honestly, just make a statement. Tell people to back off. We're not going to take it. It's disgusting what's going on. I pity law enforcement right now because they're being targeted.
I pity law enforcement and these communities as well.
Correct.
Everybody, both sides are getting victimized because they're basically on the same side. Can I play you sound on tape of Bill Bratton discussing what's been going on? It was on Morning Joe. Can you stomach Morning Joe?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
We are in a very interesting time at the moment where police are being vilified, sometimes justifiably based on some of the videos we see, oftentimes not. But there is a momentum against police. Police right now are very conflicted in the sense of, are they going to be supported if they make a mistake? Is it going to be seen as a criminal mistake rather than a mistake?
So you're seeing cops getting shot and killed, but you're also seeing communities that are not being catered to because the cops feel that they're not being appreciated, and this in turn is creating this horrible trend that Eric is pointing out.
And the common denominator is a lack of confidence and trust, right? So, but confidence, you have to be a confident community to know that your police officers are going to be there. And also the cops need to know that they have the confidence of their boss. So that's what Bill Bratton, I think, was trying to do. I do think that the president could have added a statement onto his trip. I think it was really smart politics for him. He's heading into a month where you have the UN General Assembly and you have the Pope coming to America. And remember, the Pope has also said that climate change is one of the biggest issues. I think it was a smart time of year to go. The Alaskans wanted to change the name of Mount McKinley to Denali. So I think the president, in a remarkable Denali
or Denali, tomato.
Denali. I don't know. I think you could go. I could think you could go either way.
Okay.
On that, but anyway, I had a great point, and they just told me to tease, and I can't remember.
No, just finish your point and ignore them.
Oh, so the president is saying, I want to respect states' rights in this regard. Yeah. But one of the things that they have repeatedly done is prevented Alaskans from utilizing their own natural resources. But if he continues on this trend, they can do so responsibly. They can do so with climate change in mind. But we should allow the Alaskans to do what they want to do with their resources.
National Geographic all over again. This is the deal. How about saving lives in the community, cops, and making schools better and making these communities safer?
You know what? The left is mad at him over the drilling
I know, but he's
Arctic.
like obsessed with like cumulus clouds and like
the left is permanently mad.
Well, I'm just saying they're mad at Obama too.
Unlike the right.
And by the way, just before we end, let me just say that he did call the widow of the police officer who was shot in Houston.
True.
That's true.
Good point.